10. Anomalcarus. How would you like to be swimming in the ocean, minding your own business, just trying to have fun with a couple of friends, when a shrimp so big it could eat you came out of nowhere and started gnawing on your leg? If that sounds absolutely terrifying, you'll be happy that the Anomalcarus is long since extinct. This terrible beast lived in the oceans 530 million years ago during what scientists call the Cambrian explosion. The Anomalcarus gets its name from the Greek, meaning unusual shrimp. It was a master predator and lived in the oceans all over the world. Fossils from the Anomalcarus have been found in Canada, Greenland, China, and even Australia. That's basically every corner of the globe. So, just how big was this monster shrimp? It could grow to be over 6 feet or 1.8 meters long. It had specialized eyes with thousands of lenses to give it obscenely perfect vision. Not only that, it was a fast swimmer and had front limbs with sharp and spiky segments. Combining all of these attributes, the unusual shrimp was a seriously formidable predator. It was essentially the size of a modern shark and even deadlier. Rather than having rows of sharp teeth, the Anomalcarus had 32 overlapping plates, and these plates may have been used to efficiently crush prey. The Anomalcarus is most closely related to crabs and lobsters. At the end of the Cambrian era, when 90% of life on Earth was eradicated during the Great Permian extinction, these large and terrifying shrimp, thankfully, went extinct. 9. Stethacanthus. The Stethacanthus was very similar to modern sharks. It was a kind of cartilaginous fish that lived 370 to 345 million years ago during the late Devonian period, and then into the Carboniferous era. It actually looked quite similar to the great white shark. The biggest difference is that it had an outrageously large dorsal fin that looked like an ironing board sprouting out from the top of its head. The part of the horse saddle that you hold onto while riding to keep your balance, the horn, well, that's exactly what the dorsal fin on the shark looked like. It's totally bizarre, and apparently it was used as part of a courtship ritual. Scientists know this because they've only ever found the top dorsal fin on male sharks. Even stranger is that the fin was covered in scales that were kind of like teeth. Scientists believe this was to make the creature look more frightening, since other animals would think it had 2 mouths. Yep, I think that would do the trick for me. Other than having a weird dorsal fin, the Stethacanthus was pretty normal for a shark. As you can clearly see, sharks have not changed that much since they first appeared on Earth. They have changed in size and shape, but they've remained pretty much the same. The Stethacanthus actually wasn't as voracious of a predator as some sharks. It spent most of its time in shallow coastal waters, hunting for fish, small cephalopods and crustaceans. And it was also migratory and would usually return to the same places when it was time to mate and have babies. 8. Hast Eagle. The Hast Eagle was a nightmare predator that used to live in New Zealand. According to New Zealand Birds Online, it was the biggest eagle ever described, with a wingspan of up to 9 feet, or 2.7 meters, and a total weight of almost 40 pounds, or 18 kilos. That is significantly larger than any eagle alive today. Its body and wings were that of a giant eagle, and scientists say that it had legs and a bill that was stronger than any vulture species alive today. This means it had the ability to snap through bones with a click of its beak. They also had claws and feet roughly as large as that of a modern tiger. This thing was so big and so strong it could have picked a person up and flown away with them. You wouldn't just have to keep the cat inside when the Hast Eagle was around. You'd have to keep the whole family inside, and even then you might not be safe. From what scientists have been able to put together, the Hast Eagle specialized in hunting the ancient moa on New Zealand's South Island. Moas could grow up to almost 12 feet or 3.6 meters tall, but that didn't stop the Hast Eagle. It would grab the moa with its talons and literally crush its skull. That's all it took to kill the giant beast, at which point the Hast Eagle could do whatever it felt like with the moa's remains. Thankfully, it usually just ate them. If you're wondering just how long ago this terrifying beast vanished off the face of the Earth, it was actually pretty recently. It was only between 500 and 600 years ago. The Maori of New Zealand lived alongside the Hast Eagle, and they even hunted it. There have been anecdotal stories of the Hast Eagle even preying on Maori children. 7. Xenacanthus. The Xenacanthus was a strange mixture between an eel, a shark, and a stingray. Technically, it was a type of shark that lived in the Devonian period and survived all the way until about 202 million years ago. That was when the Triassic ended. Fossils of this animal have been found all over the globe, meaning it was pretty widespread. But even though the Stethacanthus was technically a shark, it looked a lot more like a modern conger eel. It even swam like an eel and had a serpent-like body. It was really just one of the weirder sharks that came and went. But it had one very special thing that would have made it terrifying to swimmers and surfers across the globe. As you may already know, stingrays are close relatives of sharks. In the case of the Stethacanthus, it actually had a spine jutting out from the back of its head that has been connected to the spines on stingrays. Scientists speculate it was probably venomous. The shark was too small to do any real damage with its teeth, only growing to a maximum of just under 7 feet, or 2.1 meters. But if it managed to stab you with a backwards unicorn horn on its head, there's a good chance you would have been poisoned. Did you know that stingrays were close relatives of sharks? Or did that fact just shock you? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Diprotodon. This one's a personal favorite. The Diprotodon was a giant wombat. It was actually the biggest marsupial that ever walked the earth. The adult male could grow up to 10 feet or 3 meters from its head to its tail, with a maximum weight of about 3 tons or 6,000 pounds. That is a big wombat. It lived during the Pleistocene epoch, a time when lots of animals grew to preposterous sizes. The Diprotodon had a pouch, it was about the size of a rhinoceros, and it only ever ate plants. It was also contained to Australia. The remains of this ancient beast have been found all over the country, suggesting continental distribution. They would have lived everywhere that kangaroos live today. But they were significantly bigger. Even the biggest kangaroo only grows to be around 200 pounds or 90 kilos, meaning the Diprotodon could have stepped on it like a bug. The Diprotodon lived as recently as 2 million years ago. It was so big that it had basically no predators other than humans, meaning it was free to do whatever it wanted. However, the babies and juveniles would sometimes become the prey of the even more terrifying Thylacoleo, also known as the marsupial lion. The babies may also have been eaten by giant lizards known as Megalania, and even the quincana, an even more giant Australian crocodile. In other words, Australia was and always will be a terrifying place filled with terrifying monsters. 5. MegaPiran. The MegaPiran was exactly what the name suggests. It was a giant piranha. If you think swarms of ordinary piranha are terrifying, imagine being caught in a lake or river with piranha that were about 3 feet or 1 meter long each. These prehistoric monsters were about 3 times the size of modern piranhas. They also had the strongest bites out of any fish relative to their size. This doesn't mean they could bite harder than other fish. What it means is that pound for pound, the MegaPiran could bite with more force than even the legendary Megalodon. They had teeth shaped like triangular blades serrated like steak knives, which they probably used for slicing apart soft flesh and meat. However, there haven't been many specimens found for scientists to paint a clear picture. According to National Geographic, only 1 fossil has been found, and it was only part of the MegaPiran's upper jaw. Still, scientists were able to do their scientist magic and put together a lifelike model of the beast and how hard it could bite. Considering a normal piranha can bite with 30 times its weight, the MegaPiran could probably do the same. Luckily for everyone alive today, the MegaPiran went extinct somewhere around 5 million years ago. They lived in Argentina, most likely in lakes and rivers. And if you were wondering why they can bite so hard, it's because they had muscles taking up the entire space behind their eyes and mouth, with all those muscles working together to snap the teeth with incredible force. Number 4. Machimosaurus Rex. Speaking of terrifying marine monsters, a skull was found in Tunisia that led scientists to a new species of crocodile. And yes, it is the biggest ever identified. It's called the Machimosaurus Rex, and it had teeth shaped like bullets that it used to crush its prey and rip unsuspecting animals to shreds. The study of the animal was done by the University of Alberta. They discovered that the Machimosaurus Rex was the largest of the crocodiles that lived alongside the dinosaurs, and it was also the last surviving species of crocodile from the age of the dinosaurs. To put the size into perspective, it had a skull that measured 5 feet or 1.5 meters long on its own, with its full body measuring over 35 feet. That's one big crocodile. The crocodile lived 130 million years ago throughout much of northern Africa and what is today England. Back then, Europe was literally swarmed with crocodiles. However, they began to slowly go extinct as the geography changed and their habitats across Europe were lost. It was the Machimosaurus Rex that made its last stand in the little remaining sea of North America before it too went extinct. And to give you one last idea of just how truly big this crocodile was, the skull found by Italian researchers at a dig near Tunis in 2014 was 5.5 feet or 1.6 meters long, bigger than that of a T-Rex. 3. Yalopterus. At the beginning of this video, we met a giant shrimp that was 6 feet or 1.8 meters long and could have easily eaten anybody who got in its way. Now it's time to look at a giant sea scorpion that measured nearly 8 feet or 2.4 meters long. This huge monster had a claw that could easily decapitate a human head. It was the largest arthropod in the world, living 400 million years ago through the lakes and rivers of the earth, but likely never ventured into the oceans. It would have lived with other sea scorpions and prehistoric fish. It also hunted using ambush techniques. It would wait for an animal to get near enough that it could reach out one of its claws and boom, shred it to pieces. The claw of the giant sea scorpion was recently found in Germany. Unlike crabs and lobsters that only have a single pinching claw, the sea scorpion had two. It was basically the Edward Scissorhands of the water. Nobody is sure why these terrible monsters grew to be so big, but one theory is that they had to get bigger and bigger as the fish around them got bigger and bigger too. And then they had to get meaner and deadlier as the ancient fish also began growing armor. These giant scorpions were top predators until vertebrates arrived, at which point the scorpions lost their dominance and would eventually go extinct. Number 2. Direwolves. As cool as it may sound to have a bunch of direwolves running around like some kind of Game of Thrones realm, the truth is that it probably wouldn't be that great. Direwolves were massive predators that hunted in packs and were significantly more dangerous than the wolves of today. They were bigger, more muscled, and maybe even more aggressive. The last direwolf went extinct around 13,000 years ago, along with the saber-toothed tiger and the cave bear, and to be honest, we may be better off without them. But here's something interesting. Scientists from Durham University in the UK recently extracted DNA from direwolf fossils dating back around 50,000 years. They wanted to see just how closely related grey wolves are to direwolves. Results showed the two species are not actually as closely related as previously thought. Instead, they diverged genetically 5.7 million years ago from a common ancestor. The research team says both wolf species evolved similarly because of similar lifestyles, with grey wolves developing in Eurasia while direwolves grew big and mean in America. Number 1. Giant penguin. Last but not least, researchers have just discovered something you may have mixed feelings about. As it turns out, there were penguins that once roamed the earth bigger than people. There was a whole race of gigantic penguins the size of an average human being. Fossilized remains of this prehistoric monster penguin were discovered in New Zealand back in 2018 by amateur paleontologist Lee Love. The huge penguins lived between 66 and 56 million years ago and boasted an average height of 5 foot and 3 inches, or 1.6 meters. In comparison, the great big emperor penguin of today is only a maximum of 3 feet and 11 inches. The Titanic penguin also weighed around 176 pounds, or 80 kilos. While this might not seem immediately horrifying, it would be for people living in New Zealand where these monster penguins once called home. Imagine if your neighbor was a penguin that could eat your kids. Not that it would, but still, it's not something you want to risk. These penguins were actually quite a bit different from those that are still around today. First of all, the makeup of their leg bones suggests that they couldn't stand yet. They were more likely to be powerful swimmers, not the adorable waddlers we recognize today. But this has caused quite a bit of an issue for paleontologists who can't quite figure out if the penguin evolved to swim or evolved to stand. They still don't know which one came first. 10. The Giant Salamander. The giant salamander is one of the biggest and weirdest reptiles in the world. This beast occupies the rivers of China and Japan. It's so huge that the biggest ones can clock in at around 6 feet. It goes without saying, this is not your garden variety salamander. It's bigger than most people. Even more remarkable is that it has gone unchanged for millions of years. It has reached its peak in evolution, though its numbers have significantly dwindled recently, and it now stands on the brink of extinction. What does the giant salamander do? It mostly hides out at the bottom of rivers, vacuuming fish into his giant mouth whenever one swims a little too close. But what's really strange is that the giant salamander stinks like pepper. Those who have encountered one describe it as having an overwhelmingly pepper-like scent. And even though it's so big, it's actually pretty quick and can scurry off in a hurry when it needs to. It even makes weird noises, and it keeps growing bigger and bigger until it reaches the perfect adult stage, which can take years. The giant salamander can't see very well, but it's still a top predator in its ecosystem thanks to its keen sense of smell and the unique receptors it has on its skin that detect vibrations in the water, allowing it to easily hunt even while blind. Just be careful if you get in the water where this creature lives. It's probably not very keen on human invaders. 9. Megalania. The biggest lizard ever seen by human eyes is the Megalania prisca, a huge terrestrial lizard. It was a type of monitor lizard described first in Australia in 1859. At the time, the lizard was living sparsely in Australia, though it had once occupied open forests, woodlands, and even grasslands. Many people have compared the Megalania to the Komodo dragon since they are pretty similar in size and had pretty similar diets, like large mammals, other reptiles, and even giant birds. However, the Megalania was nothing like the modern Komodo dragon. It was significantly larger. The biggest of these monitor lizards could grow to be over 15 feet or 4.5 meters long. That is rivaled today only by the saltwater crocodile. It has sharp teeth that could rip apart meat very easily. This would have been handy when it was hunting ancient kangaroos, wild deer and pigs, and even goats. The lizard also had toxic saliva and was just as much of a scavenger as it was an ambush predator. Its toxic saliva could infect a victim and cause them to slowly die, at which point the lizard could feast on their corpse. According to the Australian Museum, this huge lizard may have even feasted on pygmy elephants before humans ever arrived in Australia. But today, the pygmy elephant and the Megalania are both extinct. Oddly enough, there are no complete skeletons of the Megalania, and all paleontologists have ever found are fragments of skull material along with random teeth and fossils of limbs and jaws. I'm just glad these terrifying creatures are gone. Imagine getting into a fight with this real-life dragon. 8. Malayan gariel. The Malayan gariel is a very special type of reptile that only lives in Indonesia and Malaysia and is considered endangered. It's a little smaller than other gariels found in the world, but it's by far the most unique. Just like other crocodilians, these creatures spend most of their time lounging in the water. If you are in their territory, watch out! They have specialized bodies that allow them to swim quickly, while their muscular tails propel them through the water at blistering speeds. They have eyes situated at the top of their heads, allowing them to see and hear everything going on around them, even when mostly submerged. Oh, and they can also breathe with their mouth closed, thanks to special structures in their throat that let them breathe while preventing water from getting into their mouth. But just how big can the Malayan gariel get? They're actually pretty large for a crocodilian and can grow to be just over 13 feet or 4 meters in length. They have scaly armor protecting their body and are a dark brown color rather than the traditional alligator green. If you've ever wondered what the slender snout of the gariel is for, it's used to catch fish. The slenderer the snout is, the more efficient the animal is at snapping little fish out of the water. These are apex fishermen, though they sometimes also snack on crabs, poking their snouts into their underground burrows and stealing them right out of their own homes. Not only that, but Malayan gariels have also been caught eating monkeys that wander too close to the water's edge. They'd probably eat you, if they got the chance. 7. Leatherback sea turtle. Most of us are pretty familiar with sea turtles, but are you familiar with the different types of sea turtles? The most widely distributed turtle species of all is the leatherback, which also happens to be the biggest turtle in the world, with weights of up to 2,200 pounds. Rather than having a hard, bony shell like a tortoise, the leatherback has a leathery shell made of cartilage-like tissue. It's almost as if the turtle is covered in leather armor instead of bone armor. Leatherback sea turtles can be found basically everywhere throughout the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and even the Indian Ocean. They roam from Alaska to New Zealand and don't really care how hot or cold it is, because they can maintain a consistent body temperature regardless of the water around them. Leatherback sea turtles are also great travelers. Some individuals will travel across an entire ocean, maybe even several times. Females specifically will travel to and from their favorite nesting sites, almost always returning to the exact same beach where they first hatched to build their own special nest. Even more amazing is that leatherback sea turtles don't seem to care about ocean pressure. They can dive down to 4,000 feet or 1,200 meters and stay there for over an hour. They can dive deeper than any other turtle and deeper than most marine mammals. 6. Ancient dragons. Before dinosaurs, there were reptiles that looked an awful lot like dragons and had huge heads with teeth like steak knives. They lived 250 million years ago and were called erythrosuchords, or more simply, red crocodiles. They were huge and vicious and perhaps the most effective land predators on Earth at that time. These reptiles could grow to be around 9 to 10 feet long, or 3 meters. While that doesn't sound huge by the standards of today, it was pretty large for the pre-dinosaur world. They would have walked on 4 legs and looked similar to mythical dragons, only smaller. Sadly, there isn't a whole lot we know about them. Professor Richard Butler says there are lots of animals from this time on Earth, all of them weird and interesting, but we just don't know as much as we'd like about them all. These lizards had very big heads when compared to their bodies, and experts believe it's because they were hypercarnivores, meaning they had diets composed of nothing except meat. In other words, they were super predators and hardcore meat eaters. 5. Olive sea snake. The olive sea snake is one of the biggest and scariest reptiles that you might encounter on your next snorkeling trip in Australia. These horrifying monsters live throughout the tropical Pacific Ocean between Australia and New Guinea. They also live all throughout the surrounding island groups, hiding inside the coral reefs where they find their prey. The olive sea snake is not that hard to come across, though most humans would like to avoid them. They also grow to be over 6.5 feet or 2 meters in length. Imagine a giant python, only swimming. If you're wondering if the olive sea snake is dangerous for scuba divers, the answer is, it depends. Apparently, the olive sea snake is naturally curious and has been known to approach divers. While they aren't that aggressive, they can bite when threatened, and their bite is known to be fatal. But when the olive sea snake isn't busy hunting and killing innocent divers, they're hunting other creatures in the ocean. And unlike other reptiles, the olive sea snake lives its entire life in the ocean without ever nesting on the shore, making it quite unique in the world of marine reptiles. Have you ever gone deep sea diving? What animals did you see in your expedition? Tell me about it in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife for more exciting videos just like this one. 4. The Nano chameleon. Take a look, not at the biggest reptile on Earth, but at the smallest. Scientists have just discovered the absolute smallest reptile ever seen by human eyes, a creature so tiny that it can fit on the head of a match. It's called a nano chameleon, and it's the smallest out of any other chameleon and out of any other of the 11,500 species of reptile. The body of the male chameleon is only 0.53 inches or 1.2 centimeters long. That is as tiny as it gets for a terrestrial animal, about the size of a sunflower seed. It was discovered on an expedition to Madagascar. And while the nano chameleon has been threatened recently by deforestation, it now has a protected habitat to thrive in. You can rest easy knowing this ridiculously adorable reptile will continue living for the foreseeable future. As of right now, only 2 specimens have been discovered, a male and a female, and even though the researchers tried desperately to find more, they simply couldn't. They figured the habitat the lizard lives in is quite small, which makes sense considering how tiny the chameleon is. And at the end of the day, it's lucky the scientists found 2 specimens at all. We're literally talking about chameleons that can change their color to blend in with the environment, about a ½ inch long. 3. Sea lizard egg. A couple of years ago, Chilean scientists found a strange fossil in Antarctica that they thought looked kind of like a deflated football. For 10 years, the specimen sat in a dirty old collection of unknown objects at the National Museum of Natural History in Chile. Nobody knew what it was. Finally, researchers from the University of Texas arrived to study the fossil and realized they were dealing with a giant egg from about 66 million years ago that probably belonged to some kind of ancient sea lizard reptile monster. The egg itself is almost a foot or 30 centimeters long, making it the second largest egg of any animal known to science. It's also the first fossilized egg to ever be found in Antarctica. What's really horrifying is that scientists don't actually know what animal laid the egg. It could have been a large marine reptile like a mosasaur, but scientists don't know for sure. So far as we know, mosasaurs didn't lay eggs. Nobody can even conceive of just how big and horrifying the reptilian that laid this egg would have been millions of years ago. And since there were no other fossils found nearby the egg and no other eggs have been discovered, right now we'll just have to deal with the mystery of it. Imagine if the scientists figured out how to resurrect the species from the egg though. Jurassic Park could become real. 2. Muga crocodile. The Muga crocodile is not the biggest crocodile in the world, but it is one that you've probably never heard of. It's also known as the marsh crocodile and has the broadest snout of any living croc to date. It lives only in southern Asia and on the Indian subcontinent and is more alligator than crocodile in appearance, though it is still a crocodile. The marsh crocodile has a flat head, a rounded snout, and webbed feet, although it hardly uses its feet for much. It can be found mostly in irrigation canals, saltwater lagoons, and any accompanying marsh. What's quite unique about the Muga crocodile is that it has very social behavior. They communicate and interact with one another and practice significant vocalization. When not busy snapping at each other, they build tunnels in the dirt and then hide in them during the day to beat the heat, swimming out at night to search for food. When food is scarce, Muga crocodiles will migrate across great distances to find better feeding grounds. As for just how huge these crocs get, they can grow to be a maximum of around 15 feet or 4.5 meters in length. It's not that large, but you still wouldn't want one of them to bite you. A Muga crocodile could still easily rip your leg off. Number 1. Komodo dragon. The Komodo dragon is the biggest living species of lizard, but we've all heard of them before. But what we didn't know is where it came from. Until just recently, researchers actually believe the Komodo dragon originated from a smaller lizard in Indonesia. They thought it evolved to such a large size because there wasn't enough competition from predators nearby. However, an international team of scientists may have disproved the standing theory of the origins of the Komodo dragon. Looking at fossils from eastern Australia 300,000 years to 4 million years before today, scientists have confirmed Australia as the birthplace of the legendary dragon, and quite a long time ago. Scientists are now saying the ancestor of the Komodo dragon evolved in Australia and then migrated west around 900,000 years ago, eventually landing in Indonesia. The theory is supported by fossil specimens found on the island of Timor, between Australia and Indonesia. Fossils here have revealed a new type of giant lizard larger than the Komodo dragon that has not yet been named. It now seems that all the largest lizards originated in Australia, with the Komodo dragon being the last in the line of the great lizards. But what really confuses scientists is how the Komodo dragon survived on the small islands throughout Indonesia while going extinct in Australia, which is larger, more spacious, and was filled with more food sources. 10. Eastern brown snake. The brown snake actually refers to two different genera of snakes, and these two snakes are found on two different continents. If you're in North America, the brown snake is a small, shy, non-venomous snake. But if you're in Australia, like me, the brown snake is the bane of every Australian's existence. It's one of 9 species of brown snake in the country and considered to be in the top ranking of the world's deadliest snakes. The venom is powerful enough to kill a full-grown man. The largest brown snake can measure over 8 feet or 2.4 meters in length, and according to Australian Geographic, they boast the second most toxic venom of any land snake known to science. The venom produced by the snake has several different toxins, with some causing paralysis, some preventing blood from clotting, and all of them working together to cause brain hemorrhaging, internal bleeding, and eventual death. Between 2000 and 2016, there were only about 2 deaths attributed to brown snakes each year in Australia. This is actually pretty good, all things considered. They do have quite the reputation for being aggressive, but they typically try to stay away from humans. You'd have to be very unlucky to be bitten by an eastern brown snake. Number 9. Rattlesnake. You definitely don't want to run into a rattlesnake. This is one of the most dangerous and most venomous snakes found anywhere in North America. You can find them all throughout the southwestern United States and northern Mexico. If you happen to live in Arizona, congratulations! There are 13 different species of rattlesnakes in the state, more than anywhere else. But just what makes rattlesnakes so special? It's their rattle. If you live in Arizona, chances are you're pretty familiar with it. These snakes rattle as a warning sign, and it's a really good thing they do that. The rattle has undoubtedly saved thousands of people from accidentally stepping on a coiled rattlesnake in a field and getting bitten. But what are the rattles made out of, and how do they make that noise? According to herpetologist Sarah Vianam, the rattle is built of segments of keratin at the end of the snake's tail. When the snail shakes its tail, the segments hit each other and produce a low buzzing noise. Rattlesnake venom is a nice little mixture of hemotoxins and neurotoxins, but mostly hemotoxins. Hemotoxins target blood and tissues, causing hemorrhaging and necrosis. Their venom is an absolute cocktail of chemical elements. Neurotoxins target the nervous system, which can cause paralysis. What's really cool is that each time a rattlesnake sheds its skin, it grows another segment on its rattle, making its warning even louder. 8. Saw-scaled viper. The saw-scaled viper is a small snake with deadly venom, and it's one of the most dangerous snakes in India. It's also so tiny you could probably fit one in your shoe. Just like the North American rattlesnake, the saw-scaled viper has a unique warning system that keeps people far away from it. It doesn't have a rattle on its tail. Instead, it coils tightly into a knot and rubs its scales together to make a sound like a saw buzzing. This is a life-saving noise, especially since the snake lives primarily in sand dunes where it's basically invisible due to its light brown sandy coloring. The only way to be aware of the danger is the low buzzing noise coming from the sand. They also leave unique tracks in the sand that let people know they've been there. Rather than slithering forward, these snakes move sideways, winding their way across the sand and leaving behind a messy trail of lines. As for just how dangerous the saw-scaled viper is, a single bite can cause you to lose a limb. The tissue damage can be so severe that if you don't make it to the hospital quickly enough, your arm or leg might actually fall off. 7. Mainland tiger snake. The mainland tiger snake can be identified by, well, its tiger stripes. The snake usually has an olive-brown body with light bands, making it look kind of like a tiger, though it doesn't actually have any orange on it. These snakes aren't very long, they only grow to a maximum of around 3 feet or 1 meter in length. But don't let the tiger snake's stubby stature fool you. These snakes are wildly dangerous. According to the Australian Reptile Park, the mainland tiger snake is considered the 4th most toxic land snake anywhere on the planet. The species is often associated with watery environments such as creeks, dams, drains, lagoons, wetlands, and swamps. They can also occur in highly degraded areas, for example, grazing lands, but especially where there is water and local cover. Tiger snakes will shelter in or under fallen timber, in deep matted vegetation, and in disused animal burrows. Unlike most other Australian elapids, tiger snakes climb well on both vegetation and human constructions and have been found as high as 33 feet or 10 meters above the ground. They live primarily in Australia and can be found in places with significant human populations. This means encounters can be quite common. Yikes! Back in the day, tiger snakes were the #1 cause of snakebite fatalities in Australia. They have since been overtaken by the deadlier eastern brown snake. But still, you don't want to mess with the tiger snake. They traditionally live in wet areas that have a lot of frogs and lizards. Places like these are usually teeming with these snakes. If bitten, consider yourself dead if you don't get to the hospital immediately. 6. King Cobra. In Malaysia, king cobras are basically everywhere. You can step on them just walking down the street, and they can even bite you while you're just doing your business sitting on the toilet. Well, it's not that dramatic, but they are still around. A very unlucky man recently had a rather grim encounter with one of these snakes. He was only 28 years old, working on the west coast of Borneo. He went to his house, sat down to use his toilet, and was pretty upset to say the least when a king cobra slithered out of nowhere and bit him on his left arm. The snake must have slithered into the toilet when he wasn't looking. Jeez, at least knock first. Luckily, he got the cobra off his arm, then managed to come back and beat the snake to death. He then took the snake with him to the hospital so that they could identify the deadly serpent and give him the proper antivenom. He lived to tell the tale, though the experience was ridiculously painful. This guy is actually quite lucky to be alive. King cobras can kill a person within just 30 minutes of biting them. Plus, a single bite comes with enough poison to kill 20 grown men. The bite from a king cobra can even kill an elephant. The fact that this young man had enough time to beat the cobra to death and get to the hospital is a miracle. Most people aren't so lucky. 5. Beaked Sea Snake. Sea snakes are some of the most venomous in the world. As horrifying as it is, there are about 60 species of sea snake slithering through the waterways around our planet. Most are docile, and to be honest, you don't have a very high likelihood of running into a sea snake while at the beach. However, if you happen to be in Southeast Asia, you could find yourself facing off against the beaked sea snake, a horrible creature with some of the most potent venom in the world. It's also known as the common sea snake, hook-nosed sea snake, and the Volcaden sea snake. This reptile lives in estuaries and lagoons and often gets tangled in local fishing nets. This is why fishermen are more frequently bitten by this snake than anyone else. And according to Discover magazine, the beaked sea snake has venom more potent than that of the cobra or the rattlesnake. Its fangs are only 4 millimeters long, but its jaws can stretch widely, allowing it to swallow its prey whole. This snake feeds mostly on shrimp and catfish by lurking in the shallow, murky bottoms in mangrove swamps and coastal waters. They locate their prey by touch and smell. Like other snakes, it waits for its victim to stop struggling before consuming it head first. The beaked sea snake is active during the day and at night. They don't need a lot of sleep. They're also able to dive 328 feet or 100 meters and stay underwater for 5 hours before resurfacing. Just 1.5 milligrams of this snake's venom is 4 to 8 times more deadly than cobra venom. That's a whole lot of scary in one small little package. 4. The blue snake. There are not really a lot of blue snakes just slithering and hanging around. It's a very rare color for a snake and one that belongs exclusively to the blue pit viper. Even though the snake looks very beautiful with its electric blue coloring, it's actually extremely deadly and has one of the most dangerous bites of any snake in the entire world. The blue viper has such strong venom that a single bite can cause bleeding, not only externally, but internally too. In the worst cases, this can prove fatal. Oh, and they also happen to be super aggressive. Great! But why is the blue viper so blue? It's actually a subspecies found only in Indonesia, and actually, they aren't usually blue. These snakes are almost always green, with the blue variety being extremely rare. This is because even 2 blue snakes can give birth to green babies. Blue vipers are about as rare as yellow penguins. Though beautiful, it would be in your best interest to stay far away from this Smurfy snake. 3. Blue crate. The blue crate is an exceptional snake whose venom contains neurotoxins that directly attack the human nervous system. After envenomation, a person's nervous system will shut down and death swiftly occurs within just 12 short hours. When left untreated, the mortality rate is upwards of 70%. Even if you manage to get the proper antivenom, you still have a 50% chance of dying. The blue crate is without a doubt the most terrifying snake in Malaysia, purely based on its deadliness. But what's really weird is that the bite doesn't actually hurt very much. There's usually no pain at the location where the fangs pierce the skin. This means a lot of people don't even know they've been bitten. Sometimes a blue crate will sneak into a village, slither into somebody's house where they lay asleep on the floor and bite them. Because there's no pain, the victim will often wake up already dying, suffering respiratory failure and complete paralysis of muscles and nerves. Suffice to say, this is not a great way to go. Number 2. Snake in the lettuce. A couple of shoppers in Australia got a bit more than they bargained for at their local grocer. They found a baby pale-headed snake inside their bag of fresh produce. It happened to a couple in Sydney. They purchased a bag of supermarket lettuce and found the rare venomous snake staring back at them once they got home. At first, the couple didn't know what to do. The reptile was pretty small and seemed to be sleeping when they opened the bag. Not knowing what kind of snake it was, the couple were wise to stay away and call animal services. Animal services told them on the phone to be careful because it could be a baby eastern brown snake, one of the most venomous and aggressive in the whole country. It was after the couple shared pictures that they were told the snake was medically significant. They found out later that medically significant means if bitten, you must go to the hospital immediately. Nobody is sure how the snake got into the lettuce. These are pretty shy snakes, and luckily they have no recorded fatalities. The animal services finally came and took the snake away from the couple, but if one of them had stuck their hand in the bag by accident, they would have been in some big trouble. 1. Mangrove Snake. The mangrove snake is actually one of the least known venomous serpents in the entire world. Have you heard of it? No? Didn't think so. It's a very unique looking animal, slender with narrow yellow bands segmented across its black body. Another name for the mangrove snake is the yellow-ringed cat snake. The eye structure allows it to see a lot better at night when it is most active and on the hunt. This thing just looks venomous. It can normally be found coiled around mangrove branches, hence the name, that hang over coastal waters. In other words, if you're doing some kayaking at night, you'd better be careful of mangrove snakes in the trees above. But where do these venomous snakes live? Primarily in Southeast Asia. They can be found all throughout Indonesia and Malaysia, through Thailand, all the way to Vietnam. And even more horrifying is that according to the Smithsonian National Zoo, a population of mangrove snakes was accidentally introduced to Texas. As for just how venomous the mangrove snake is, most people won't actually die from a single bite. It has rear fangs that inject its victims with mild venom. It uses this venom for hunting its prey, which primarily consists of birds, though the venom has little effect on land animals like mice and other small mammals. In humans, it's not exactly lethal, but it will cause discoloration of the skin and agonizing pain for the unlucky person that was bit. Thanks for watching! Which one of these snakes freaked you out the most? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button for more awesome content. See you next time! Bye-bye now.